Welcome back, Bobcats. Second part of our lecture on early cities, okay? The first group of early cities that we talked about was pretty much in modern-day Israel and that area that is now modern-day Turkey that we called Anatolia, Phrygia, all that. This next time period that we're talking about is going to be from 5000 BCE to 3000 BCE. And if you'll remember, with our little equation, we added a couple thousand years to that. This actually means about between 7,000 and 5,000 years ago. All right? Remember, BCE stands for Before Common Era. Okay? And in these years, we have development in the region surrounding the Mediterranean Sea. Okay? When I bring down the map at the end of this video, I'll show you that region as well. Okay? There's lots of development occurring on the east coast of the Mediterranean Sea and also in northern Africa as well. Other development is found in the Nile River Valley. Okay, this would be our ancient Egyptian civilization there. And what's known as the Fertile Crescent. And we will be talking about this region a little bit later in the year. But the Fertile Crescent is surrounded by, and it's kind of in the shape of a crescent, you know, like a crescent moon or like a croissant. The area there is surrounded by two rivers, okay? And those two rivers, the Fertile Crescent is bordering the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers, okay? And that Fertile Crescent is in the region in between those two rivers. If you think about it, if you have area that's between two rivers, you can probably assume that that land there is really, really good farmland because you have easy access to water, which is something, as you'll remember from our last video, these early cities always need to be near sources of water, whether it's a lake or a river, okay? Tigris River, this was one of your vocabulary terms. Make sure that you get that in there, okay? Now, in the Fertile Crescent, the most obvious examples would be in modern-day Iraq, okay? Modern-day Iraq. I'll show you that on the map here in just a second, okay? And some of the early cities in this region, we have, once again, a vocabulary term, Eridu, Uruk, and Ur. These are not very good names for cities, but they're old names, okay? That's probably not what you would name your city, but there's three of them there, okay? Ur is just U-R, okay? And when we talk about ancient Mesopotamia and the Babylonian societies, we will mention this city as well, okay? It's very important. Now, Ur, it's important for you guys to know that by about the second millennium BCE, it is theorized that this city of Ur had upwards of 100,000 citizens, okay? Now, if you'll remember from the last video, the last city we talked about was 10,000, and that's what we're considering an early city, is anywhere between like 5 or 10,000 citizens. This is huge. This is huge. And if you think about it, a modern-day city that has about 100,000 might be something like Flagstaff. And if anybody's ever been to Flagstaff before, they're actually around 85,000 or 90,000 people. And that's when people are attending school. And that changes during different parts of the year. So this would be a city that would be bigger than Flagstaff if you think about it, okay? Maybe not as far as the land that's being used, but as far as the people living there. This is a very, very big city for this time in history, okay? Now, in this area, you'll remember the cities that I mentioned in the last video, like Catalhoyok and Jericho. Those cities didn't have any kind of public centers where citizens would meet and discuss what should be done for the community, or maybe some sort of religious function or any other kind of governmental function. That didn't really exist in those first two that I mentioned. But in the Fertile Crescent and near the Mediterranean Sea, we are starting to see our first buildings that are meant for public function of some sort. They're not a house. It's not just one person staying there. It's where many people meet for certain things. And one type of building we will start seeing is known as a temple, okay? And temples are religious and governmental centers at this time. There might be a certain form of religion in a certain community. And let's say they worship the frog god or something, right? They worship a god that looks like a frog, okay? So everybody shows up, they all pay homage to the frog god, and then they take off. This would be a temple where they would discuss those things, their relationship with their spirituality. But as I mentioned also, they could be governmental centers. So they might be talking about, we don't have enough grain to feed everybody, or we need more people to work on this building over here, okay? So there could be governmental functions in there as well. Now, I also mentioned the Nile River Valley, okay? And that would be Egypt, okay? And we also have a few early cities in Egypt as well as a blossoming civilization. But the earliest cities in Egypt, we'd have, for instance, Abydos, okay? Abydos. Now, this city has about 20,000 population at its largest, okay? And this city at the time served as a burial city for kings. And those kings in ancient Egypt are known as pharaohs. That's something that you'll actually learn with your Egypt game readings, okay? If it's an Egyptian king and it's ancient Egypt, they are called a pharaoh, okay? So Abydos will be a burial city for those kings. Pretty interesting stuff, because you might have a pharaoh that's in charge of all the Egyptians in a certain area, but Abydos is where Egyptian citizens could go and honor older kings or see kind of the lineage of those kings, okay? Lastly, in Egypt, we have the ancient city of Memphis, okay? Now, you might have heard that name before, because in the United States, we actually have a city named Memphis in Tennessee. And for any of you that have actually been to Memphis, Tennessee, one of the things that you'll see there is a pyramid. Now, we are not talking about the Memphis that is in the United States. Not at all, okay? We actually borrowed that name from the ancient Egyptians because we admire their civilization, okay? Memphis has between 30,000 and 50,000 people in this time period, okay? And it is the oldest capital of the Egyptian Empire, okay? Now, modern-day Egypt has a capital as well. Today, that is Cairo. It's a different city than Memphis, but just so you know, as they're starting to build their government and starting to build a civilization in ancient Egypt, Memphis is going to serve as the first capital of that civilization. Okay? Now, let me go ahead and pull down the map here real quick, and we'll take a look at some of the areas we're talking about. Okay, so once again, we've got the continent of Africa right here, and you'll see between Africa and Egypt and the Arabian Peninsula, remember we mentioned this last week in our discussions about migration, you've got what's known as the Mediterranean Sea. And you've got some of the largest, oldest civilizations that start popping up all around the Mediterranean Sea. And as I already mentioned, Turkey and Israel, from the time that we were talking about in the last video, is also bordering the Mediterranean Sea. This is a major hub of activity here, okay? But we've got, we mentioned the Fertile Crescent, okay? That's actually very close to Turkey, and we've got two rivers right here. I mentioned we've got Tigris, which is just north of the Euphrates River. And everything between the Tigris and the Euphrates is known as the Fertile Crescent. Very good farmland. Okay? Then in the northeastern part of the African continent here, we can see a giant river coming all the way into modern-day Ethiopia. Well, that river is the center, is the lifeblood of the ancient Egyptian civilization. And this is where we'll have those cities that we mentioned, like Abydos and Memphis as well. All right, now stay tuned. We'll have one more video for early cities coming up.